Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Car Design News, Navigating Design in the Midst of a Crisis. It's with great pleasure. I'm your host today, Abel Sampson, and I will be joined by three of esteemed colleagues within the design community from the Royal College of Art, Dale Harrow, Chair and Director of Intelligent Mobility Design, his colleague, Chris Thorpe, and Design Director for the UK SAIC studio, Gotham. So, but before we get started, we're going to actually give you an insight on things that have happened in the week of design. So I'm going to put a slide up. So if you just bear with me. And these are some of the key issues which have happened this week in design. We're going to give these recap every week as we go through the series. And the first one is the Hunan Auto Show in China. I'm not sure how many of you know that this show actually took place on the 30th of April to the 5th of May. It had nearly 600 car brands available and 600 vehicles spanning over 60,000 square meters. You know, the Hunan actual region is just below Wuhan where the outbreak took place. Now, although this may not be an international show, it shows what can be possible and can be organized under strict health checks, everyone wearing a face mask and actually knowing and having access to apps so you know where people are at all time. So this is a real positive for our industry and something that is an insight of when the Beijing Auto Show happens in September, which is confirmed, the Guangzhou Motor Show, which will happen in November. And I had actually a conversation with the LA Auto Show in late November, and they're still on track to happen as well. So it's all positive. The second thing is really we're talking about cars and about the concepts that are being developed. And on CDN, we've had a sneak preview of some sketches and some renderings of the MG Cyberster concept unveiled. It's really on social media. And, you know, from our point of view, it's super positive. It's a revival of, you know, a most famous Great British brand, MG. And in a way, if you really look at the images, so please do have a look at Car Design News. It's going back to some of the heritage of the MG Roadsters. And, you know, although it's only some initial drawings and some initial sketches, you know, it'd be wonderful to see if that can actually happen and which markets the guys are actually going to launch it in as being strong to the UK brand. Our next highlight is Gustavo Guerrero, Design Director of Volvo Trucks. You know, he's just been promoted to that position. You know, a guy who's Brazilian background, you know, has worked in Sweden, worked in China, moved over to the US, worked across several of the range of the brands within the Volvo truck, and now has moved back to Sweden as a design director of the whole group. You know, really positive to see that his actual career has progressed, and great to see in our industry that people are still being recognized. And the final thing I wanted to mention was the Interior Motives Digital Edition. You know, back in 2002, when I had the honor to launch Interior Motives, you know, it was always intended to be a physical product, you know, something that you feel in touch and get quite emotionally attached to. And in a way, that's what we've always felt. But with the virus coming in and, you know, the challenges we faced at distributing it and even producing it with printers being available, you know, producing something which is more dynamic, more rich and engaging in its content, and more flexible how we can show the content, whether it be through videos, whether it be from moving images. And, you know, it is quite a dynamic way and shows what can be done and how we can use one platform to show many different ways of an interior can be displayed. So that's the fun bit over. So I'm going to take my screen off and we're going to move to a poll. We always like to ask a poller because it gives us a chance to get an insight on what you guys are thinking. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Kat, who's going to actually start the poll. Okay. So you can see the question, it should be on your screen. How successful have colleges and training platforms been able to provide virtual learning for more automotive design? This is both for students, professional designers. You know, how successful has it been? I've got to fill in the time while we're waiting for the poll to come through. So I think I need to go back maybe here. So I think we're collecting the responses. There's a nice mixture of answers coming through. So if you just bear with me a second, we've just got 50 seconds left. Again, if you've got a chance, do go to Car Design News and look at the MG. I think it's an amazing concept. I think it's extremely positive. And I think my screen has popped up. Okay, right. The poll results are in. Now, hopefully you can see my screen where the results are in. Okay, so I just want to check if you can all see my screen, if somebody could put in chat. Okay, well anyway, look, I'm going to give you the results. So the results are in. Excellent, good, okay, and poor. So we've got a mixture of good and okay digital support. So I think that's, you know, at least we're not poor, at least, because that would be a really bad initiative if we had a poor result. So I think all in all, it's quite positive. Now I want to see if I can get my webcam back on. Right. Hopefully you can just see me now. Right. Now we're moving on to the main part, and we're going to bring back our speakers. So if I can get Dale, Chris, and Carl to click on their webcams. Right, now, give us a wave, guys. And Dale, can you switch your mute button off and just tell us where you are at the moment, what environment you're in?
My name's Dale. I'm the chair of the Intelligent Mobility Centre at the Royal College of Art. I'm at home at the moment in lovely Weybridge, which is about 35 miles outside London. Very nice day, sunny outside. We've just been out for the first time with my wife for a long time in the car and drove straight into a traffic jam, which kind of says that the world is beginning to get back to normal. So welcome everyone. I hope we can give you some information this afternoon.
Yeah, and Carl, can you give us where you are at the moment and a little bit about your job?
Yes, hello everybody. Yeah, so I'm sat at home, like many people at the moment, in Leamington Spa. So yeah, a bit further north than our usual location in London. So yeah, my role is running the Advanced Design Studio for SAIC Motor, so SAIC, Shanghai Automotive, and yeah, our studio in central London. So obviously, yeah, we've been quite heavily affected by the current situation, like everybody else. And yeah, we've been working remotely for the past 2 months, facing up to this kind of latest challenge. Yeah, obviously looking forward to getting back to some normality whenever that might happen. But yeah, busy working in all of our various locations. All the designers are all at home at the moment, busy working. So. And yeah, obviously, thanks for inviting me today. Obviously, our relationship with the RCA, we've been working with the RCA for around 4 or 5 years now as an organisation, both with the programme and also through the Intelligent Mobility Design Centre, so on research projects. And and also, as you know, Abel, we do a design challenge every year. So this year we're in our 8th year. Unfortunately, obviously, it's been affected by the current situation, but last year we launched that at the RCA. So very, very prestigious location and event to launch our competition. And we've always had great support from the Royal College of Art with that side of things. So yeah, and obviously as some of our team, being based in London, are RCA alumni. So yes, so that's a bit about me and us.
Okay, and Chris, you have the pleasure of working at the RCA and working with Dale. Can you fill us in on what you do at the RCA and where your location is at the moment?
Thank you, Abel. Yes, I work very closely with Dale Harrow and the team at the Intelligent Mobility Design Centre. My role at the college is to run the Intelligent Mobility Master of Arts programme, a very successful MA programme which has been evolved and succeed the vehicle design MA that was successful for many, many years, which Dale established and developed. We have about 30 students on the MA, fully postgraduate, which is as per the Royal College of Art. And I'm currently working from home. I'm in Farnham in Surrey, which is about 60 miles west of London. And we have a team of tutors as well who are online as part of the programme that deliver online teaching now for the last 2 months to all the students that we have on the course.
Excellent. And I should actually say I'm actually in Old Windsor, which is the cheap part of Windsor, where Windsor Castle is, but it's only 3 miles down that way. And I'm very close to where Dale is, actually. We live relatively close to each other, although he lives in Surrey and I live in Berkshire. Mine doesn't sound so glamorous. So I just wanted to start with a question. And I wanted to ask this question to Dale first. So we asked the audience, how successful has colleges and training platforms been able to provide virtual learning for automotive design? Is that a big question to ask you, Dale, or could you give an answer to that?
Okay, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, one thing I'd like to say is just a little bit about the Royal College, because I think we're really unique in the sense that we've got something like 35 programs at the college, and we cover everything from fine arts all the way through to engineering, really, with applied arts in the middle. So the traditional things like ceramics and metalwork, as well as the fine arts in sculpture and things. So one of the great things for students really is to be able to access all those disciplines. So the fact we can't do that at the moment is quite a frustration for a lot of students. I think the other thing I'd like to say is that some disciplines transfer better, I think, to teaching online with screen-based activities rather than the making activities. And that's a real challenge for areas across the college where making is so fundamental to the output. If you're in textiles, you can visualize it on screen, but you have to feel and almost taste the textile for it to work. So I think there's certain challenges different to disciplines. I think in some ways, what's really difficult at the moment is the lack of a studio activity, that sort of chatterbox that you get in the studio, and the kind of serendipitous moments where you're talking over a desk and someone else is listening, and those sorts of things are missing. But I think the delivery of kind of teaching and tutorials is quite effective if you get it right. And I think because the industry has got quite a lot of screen-based activities, it's relatively transferable to put on the screen. I mean, in some ways, I walk around a studio now and see people looking at a screen all day anyway with their earphones on. So taking it one step removed is quite straightforward, I think. But it's still a very different experience from the dynamic environment of a studio, I think.
Carl, can I ask you a question then? Obviously, you work with the college, and you have a program, or you're announcing the program through the college. How do you envisage that happening? Because you can't really talk to the guys, or how would you perform that? Being SAIC, is there a preferred method of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, they're all things that we've got to kind of face up to now in terms of this kind of remote working situation. And I think, as Dale said, a lot of our industry has moved into a more digital kind of format. Certainly in the initial stages. Of course, claim modeling activities and so those things are obviously vital, equally important, but in terms of the kind of engagement on projects we have with the universities, and not just the RCA, but other universities as well, I think, yeah, sharing, it's important that we share about ourselves, who we are, who the students are, who they are listening to, and who we are as an organisation. So again, that can be done through these kind of mediums, these kind of channels, and yeah, and obviously, as we're doing at the moment with the team, reviewing things and giving feedback, that's my daily job at the moment, is getting people to drop stuff into locations for me to review it, feedback. The feedback loop is really the important part of this process. So I think in the future, yeah, I think these kind of online competitions, and we've seen some sort of sketch challenges and things on Instagram and so forth. I think these kind of initiatives are going to become more popular and more more active in the future.
Yeah. And Chris, from your point of view, one of the challenges of doing virtual learning, we were talking about locations. The Royal College of Art, as us three know, and maybe some of the audience do, is in one of the most beautiful parts of London. Having that kind of cultural experience must be a huge element of why you go to a major city to study, especially London. I'm not biased at all. I think London's one of the best cities in the world. But how have you addressed that with the students? Because the challenge is you've taken away from that environment, not their fault or your fault, but how have you addressed that situation, campus-based and non-campus-based?
It's the massive challenge, I think, as Dale alluded to. The great thing about the college is the richness that the students have in terms of interacting with different programs. I think we've seen over the last 2 months with our program, the students that we have on our course, fortunately, are very adaptive, very resourceful. They've adapted very quickly. There's no way we can replace the experience that they get physically in London. What we have done is the college to build on the virtual online opportunity, and so we've had a whole series of other supported seminars and experiences that students have been accessing, particularly across programs. So engaging between programs in the college to actually build and share skills in a virtual studio online space, if you like. But also it's built quite quickly a community for us that's been global. So we've had the fortunate opportunity to have people like Tim Brown from IDEO on webinar platforms for our students, and Johnny Ive as well, which has probably been far easier to set up and run than it would have been if we'd actually been in the college trying to get people into a physical space. So in some ways we've tried to adapt and build some of the positive elements of working online, and also be very sensitive to the fact that we need to work in a very different way and trying to adapt that. We're also very fortunate, I think, on our program in that we've got a great team of tutors who are active professionals right now, and the skills that they bring for their own working environment is very useful to us in actually helping us to ensure that the way we teach and the way we create an experience is contributing to their learning outcomes. So it is very different, but there are benefits to that as well that we're trying to exploit and explore.
Okay. And Dale, in regards to your preferred platforms, what are you using as your main, or is there a group of platforms you're using to teach the students? Can you share with us what your preferred? mode?
Mostly, I think I was thinking about the type of activities that go on. So, within programs kind of evolve all the time, but there's certain kind of activities. There's sort of tutorials with tutors. They tend to be through Zoom, where it's a one-to-one discussion and looking at sharing screens and going through the work, as you would do really at a desk and looking through a book, sketchbook. There's things like lectures, which Chris mentioned, so we bring in people, keynote lectures and things like that. We've got Jerry McGovern's doing one at the end of the month and some other things, so we're trying to bring those things in. And then the other activities, such as teaching direct, again, that can be done through Zoom and sharing screens. So I think, to me, the key is a lot of the time is the preparation of stuff to do the work. You need to do much more upfront preparation than you would do normally to make sure the things are there. And I think in terms of the Chris knows more intimately about the computer side of the digital side, but we're using Alias and all the normal things, and the students are very adept at finding new packages and stitching programs together to make things work as well.
Yeah. And Carl, adding to that question, you've got a group of young, senior designers, I assume, and some young designers through your programs, because looking at your competition, you actually give the kids the opportunity, or the young designers, to transfer from different regions of the world, whether it be to China or whether it be to the UK. How have you kept them motivated through this difficult time? Have you had any strategies on how to keep them focused and up to date and really up for it, really?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, it kind of goes back to my point earlier, the communication is the key, and making sure that, this kind of environment has benefits and negatives for sure. We've got the opportunity for people to really focus on, one thing and deliver against one thing, but it's a bit of an echo chamber if you're not getting that opportunity to bounce off your colleagues, or even approach me and get some quick feedback. That process takes a lot longer in this environment. So I make sure that, to be honest, I make myself available as much as possible. My kind of working day, as we were talking earlier, the working day is kind of blurred. From start to finish, it starts and ends when it needs to, and I think that's important, because I need to make sure that the team members have all got the access and have got the ability to get some feedback if they need it, to be able to move forward and to go in the right direction. So and actually it is proving quite efficient in that respect. So overall we've had a relatively positive kind of experience through this process. Like I said, there are negatives to it, but of course, but we're totally engaged in all of the projects. We're having weekly reviews. I'm presenting to our board members still on projects. So there's still we've still got a lot of activity, and I'm able to, because we've got that good channel of communication with our China studio as well. We're able to keep that feedback and keep that communication, so all the designers are aware of what's going on and what are the priorities. So yeah, that's kind of how we've been keeping everyone moving forward, really. That, and we've got some excellent projects able, so
yeah, I think I should have mentioned this before. One expects for the short term we're going to see more activity coming out of China and maybe Korea than anywhere else at the moment. I do think from my experience of talking to design directors, there is work done, but whether they're able to communicate it is another matter until they get out of the lockdown and whether we get a spike. I've got a question from the audience, which is, how do you see our current virtual design and remote working impacting designing experience? Is that good or goodo? But I guess that means good or bad.
Maybe I can jump in. I think the interesting thing at the moment is whether it will change processes within companies. I'm talking to a lot of people. Part of my life is running this Research and Design Centre, which is attached to the overseas, really, the MA program. we do a lot of things, different sort of activities there, working sometimes with user research and things like that, which are very difficult this time. But talking externally, I think there is some thought about, do you make as many clay models in the future, for example? Maybe companies that made 7 might make 4 instead of 7, you know, when they're developing products. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this type of working leads to a different type of working in studios moving forwards, you know. And I don't know whether Carl's got any views about that, but it'd be interesting to see if it happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, our situation in London, you know, our studio is in central London. We all know how expensive real estate is in London, and the sort of commodity of space. So, so actually, yeah, we haven't got the luxury of a big clay studio. We've got, you know, a very nice, modern, well-equipped studio, but its focus is digital design, processes primarily. Ironically, we have just kitted out a small studio for clay modeling, sketch and scale clay modeling in the basement just before this pandemic. So, because there is that balance, but yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been very active and you know, having some great output and productivity through doing digital kind of processes anyway. So, so yeah, so I think you're right, Dale. It's likely that there'll be a little bit more of this, but it's probably harder for most of the, you know, more established sort of studios that have got those big facilities to take that leap and to sort of potentially leave some of that behind. It's you know, it's quite a difficult thing to do. So we've had that opportunity because we moved location, so we didn't really have much option. But yeah, and obviously there's the VR tools and you know, all the technology that have come around in the last couple of years are certainly going to help with that situation. We use VR all the time, you know, on a weekly, almost daily basis, and when we're in the studio. I didn't bring it away with me when we sort of disbanded, but yeah, I can see, you know, those kind of systems are going to help with sharing information and getting an understanding remotely of what's going on.
Okay. Have you or are you interested using VR reviews to evaluate form and proportion? Sorry, it's clicking through Gravity Sketch, allowing up to 10 people. It's kind of like, you know, you've seen Gravity Sketch, I guess, guys. This is the next level of. Have any of you actually used it or have seen it?
Yeah, we're investigating it at the moment. We've seen it over the period it's been developing, and it's got to be pretty sophisticated now. So we're very interested in seeing how we can develop that, you know, as a part of our process, really. You know,
I think
as
also
college,
I think
we don't have massive facilities to do full-size clay models, so an intermediate step for us would be to do some more VR work, you know.
Yeah, I've got another question because that was very specific, and I'm guessing it's from a Gravity Sketch guy. In recent years, experience design and designing future experiences versus just traditional form and function have become increasingly important to the success products and business. How do you see the current virtual design and remote working impacting designing experience? I asked the same question already, haven't I? Sorry, I apologize.
I think
my screen is a bit jumpy.
I mean, I think the difficult thing with, I mean, I was just thinking of some of the activities we do in the centre, which maybe are using user groups and testing, using experience design and service design as part of that. Those things are much harder to prototype in a virtual environment, really. You need, you know, bringing people in and doing testing and observational research and things like that are much harder to do in a virtual sense. So you do need people, and you do need them to respond. Okay.
This is quite a difficult question, and I'm going to open it to the floor. In the midst of layoffs and industry themselves facing numerous uncertainties, probably to you, Carl, then, how will outbreak impact opportunities for students in the coming months?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a really you know, it's a really good question, and the industry is obviously, you know, is going through a little bit of a tough period for sure. So, I mean, it's difficult to say for sure. I mean, obviously we're, you know, if the studio is open right now, actually, you know, we should have interns with us now, but we've had to put that off because obviously we can't bring them into the studio. So, the studio was open, no problem. You know, we'd be opening those opportunities up. I think from if I think about how those things might work in the future, I mean, we have to manage that, because obviously, you know, if we do a remote process with interns, we need to basically still control that so that there's a good quality of engagement, so that it's not, you know, lots of, you know, we're not just opening up to lots of people, because again, the internships are about that one-on-one engagement and interaction with experienced designers in a studio environment. So there will be an element of you know, lacking that sort of culture of a studio, which, you know, is partly why I got into this job. You know, that studio environment is unique. You know, you don't get it anywhere else. So so yeah, those things are a challenge. But the world is, you know, the world is changing, and actually, you know, we often look to the younger generations for those kind of fresh ideas and that new thinking, and that kind of alternative viewpoint. You know, their fingers are on the pulse. That's what we hope. So so, you know, if they're good and the portfolios are good and they've got the right attitude and the right kind of outlook, then, you know, those opportunities will still be there. It's just maybe going to be a bit harder to kind of fight, I guess, seek them out.
Yeah. And from your point of view, I've got a question here, probably for Chris then. There might be certain parts of design that be more difficult for students to learn in lockdown. So, for example, if they need to learn how a certain piece of software works, but they don't have access to it at home, how have you addressed that?
It's a really complex situation because the discipline is so broad now, and I think the software that students need access to can be very diverse as well. I think on the program we haven't seen, I don't think, too many challenges ourselves with that. You know, we are lucky in that the students have access through the RCA to most of the software packages that they would be using anyway. Have a very good, as I said, tutors who are competent advising the students where to look for the right software packages. So yeah, I think teaching software is probably the less problematic challenge in terms of how we educate the students. It's probably more easy to do that online than, say, teaching them more tacit skills like 3D. But that's something else that we're trying to find ways of delivering as well. So I personally, I don't think the software side of what we're doing is necessarily the biggest challenge, actually.
Okay. We've obviously got a challenging time, and Dale, this is maybe possibly to you, on how things are being graded. We've just had the government in the UK say that some of the marks for some of the major exams are at a lower level, a lot lower level than masters or bachelors are being predicted. How have you addressed that element of marking students' work, which is slightly different to previous years?
Well, we're a bit lucky on the vehicle or on the IN program, because the program is 15 months, so our students have gone through their final examination, which was maybe 2 months ago now. So we're looking at that, but it is a real challenge across the college, particularly for disciplines where there's a lot of making involved, you know, and the kind of, you know, in areas like fine art, where the installation of the work is really crucial to the kind of presentation of the work. So there's elements about setting exhibitions up and things, which is also part of the examination. So I think it's a real challenge. I mean, we do assess the students on a term-by-term basis. So there's a series of gateways they go through. So they build their assessment cumulatively. But you know, I think it's always difficult. I mean, I've been examining for many years, and you know, an exam can be great on the day or be poor on the day, and some students can shine, and it can make a complete difference to an examination board. So I think you miss those moments. Are hard to capture over a screen, I think. I was thinking earlier on that tutorials, the interesting thing of doing tutorials online, I sat in some the other day, is it evens out the students very fairly. So you don't get someone with a loud voice taking over the sessions. The bad side is you miss a bit of the theatre, you know, where people are gifted presenters and they can kind of sell you an idea, and that's all part of being a designer, to do that. So you miss those opportunities a little bit, I think. I don't know what Chris thinks about that.
Yeah, I think that's very perceptive. I mean, we're very fortunate also in that, as Dale has said, most of our students from last year graduated last December. We're now into the second term, and our students in the first year have already sort of experienced 2 sort of major projects. It's also a modular program, which allows us to be very sort of careful how we actually lead the students through the different sort of parts of the curriculum. Having also said that, I think the standard that we're seeing is actually very high. From a recent project that was done with Peter Schreier a few weeks ago, the output was very good, and I think we're very lucky in that we have high quality students. Hopefully that's reflected in the standard of the work still being very high and the students being very motivated. And around that, we try to ensure the students are still held to deliver high quality work, rather than to look for the, if you like, change the standards to reflect the current environment. You know, we hold a very high standard at the college, and that I think that works well to ensure the quality stays high as well.
I realise I'm going to ask quite a difficult question, and you have to be guarded on how you answer it. Don't give us the results of what the students got last week. But that judging process you're talking about, which happened, you know, relatively, whether it was last week or the week before, how is that different to how you would have done it traditionally? I mean, you said you did, I'm guessing you did reviews with the students, you had discussion with the people. Was it that different, or was it quite similar in what you traditionally would do?
The process was very similar, extremely similar. So at a final review, the students present their work. They have a certain period of time to discuss how they've approached the project. And then there's an assessment phase. I think what Dale said, which is the ability to pick up on the sort of direct, intimate kind of environment of a one-to-one presentation within a studio space. And so I think, yes, you know, you do lose that theatre. Having said that, the students are all very competent now about presenting online, and so it doesn't feel, it's not massively compromised, I don't think, to an online presentation.
Okay, and one of the things that, you know, we run the Car Design News China Awards and Interior Motors Awards in the past, and we get teams competing with a collective group of individuals coming together, which is a big part of the learning process, I guess, and a big part of, Carl, what you do when you're in the studio. How have you actually dealt with that issue with this remote virtual environment? How have you made sure that has happened, and how have you kept the students engaging with each other and their work being fluid when it comes out, the end result?
Chris, do you want to take that?
So I thought it was directed to Carl.
I know, it's basically to you two. I mean, I'll get to Carl in a minute. I'll make it a bit harder when I get to Carl.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, I think you know, what we do at the college is we have we have a series of kind of ranges. So we might have smaller tutorial groups within individual tutors, and so we can still do those activities over Zoom or other way digitally. It's not that different, really. I think the thing that's probably very crucial is you make sure there's a very good timetable. You know, you need to really make sure that the students and the staff are all bound into a collective timetable. So the same in the centre, we have very regular meetings, you know, in terms of you know, project meetings, theme meetings, catch-up meetings, team meetings. So you kind of created an atmosphere that is as open as it can be, even though you're doing it down the screen. And I think you have to put some effort in to maintain that. It's not straightforward, you know. You replace those serendipitous moments of walking through a studio and having a 5-minute talk to someone by creating a meeting point, you know, even if it's only for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's sort of two elements really. There's, as Dale said, there's a kind of a formal process, which is the structure of the week and the curriculum that follows sort of quite sort of fixed elements, which include, you know, one-to-one tutorials, seminar programs. Then we have workshops online to build skills and to build competence. Then there's sort of very much tutor-led or program-led. And then complementing that, which is probably more the studio side, is the student-led activities. So we're setting up frameworks for the students to engage independently together without tutor input in a sort of virtual studio space. So I think as Dale said, we're trying to very much give structure, but also let students have a degree of independence and build their own sort of resilience in terms of how they as a group build social connections, share skills, and share their own insights. And it's a mix of those two that we're trying to develop on the program.
Yeah, and Carl, it was interesting you said that you know, one of the elements is the longer working hours, and from my experience, probably more Zoom, Hangout, Team, WeChat calls. You probably live on WeChat, Carl, I assume.
Yeah.
How have you made sure that the teams are, you know, they're in an environment which is a bit strange, you know, kind of like my daughter's making cookies and I can smell them and I get distracted, but we're working extremely hard at the moment. How have you managed that amongst the team and the dynamics between the different members of that team? And kept them, make sure that they don't overdo it or underdo it.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a real problem. I think particularly for some of, you know, we've got young designers in, you know, in apartments in central London, maybe not much space, you know, being told they can't go out for more than half an hour, or they can go out or they can't. I'm not quite sure anymore, but they're kind of cooked up in spaces, and yeah, it is a problem. I mean, it's not something. It's quite difficult to sort of get around that aspect of it, but yeah, communicating through different channels and phone. I mean, obviously phone, you know, speaking face to face or, you know, voice calls are much more effective than sending, you know, emails and messages. But yeah, I'm bouncing around all morning on different conversations on different platforms, whether it's China, whether it's in the UK, because some systems obviously don't work out there and some systems work better here. So so yeah, it makes it quite complicated just to keep on track of all the various different lines of communication. And like you said, there are distractions obviously around, you know, being at home and so forth, but you know, it's all the designers know, you know, each week we have a, you know, I meet and we talk regularly, you know, several times a day with you know, the chief designer in the studio and the senior members. So actually everybody knows what is going on. Everybody knows what are the priorities for that week, what are the you know, the coming schedule and deadlines. Again, you know, if we know something's happening, make sure that we're receiving the work in time that we can give some, you know, I can give some direction, some feedback on. Yeah, so you know, that side of things has been working quite well, but yeah, there is a kind of a sort of more of a psychological aspect to this, working alone in a space. You know, it maybe isn't, you know, it isn't ultimately that healthy, to be honest. So I think the sooner, yeah, we can get some more interaction in a physical way, and that might not be pull everybody back all at once together. A little bit like, you know, the system in China, which was basically a sort of reintroduction of team members on a shift basis, so that actually they controlled the numbers, and the flow of the studio was sort of maintained to a reasonable level. I think those sort of measures are probably going to, you know, we're going to be looking at those kind of things as well as we move forward. But yeah, it's not straightforward. I think we'll learn a lot from this. We'll probably come out of the other end thinking, actually, we could have done it better if we'd have done this, or we'd have set these things up at the start of the process. But yeah,
and you know, what I have from discussions I've had recently, there's a lot of car makers have realised that certain people can be more dynamic being in, you know, their home offices where there's less distractions. I've heard that from consistently, that they've been surprised on who has performed better when they've had that freedom to be able to work and not get interrupted. Now now that we've actually spoken about what you do now and where you are now and what's happening now, let's move a little bit forward. So the marks have come in for the students. They're all super excited. They're celebrating, and they're looking for jobs. Traditionally, the college would host a show. Great for me because it's only 3 miles from our office. But now you don't have that option. Well, how are you going to address the situation of these students and all the hard work that they put in, and also getting the OEMs to have an experience of that?
I'll ask
that
Chris
could be to the YouTube, yeah.
I'll ask Chris to start with that because he's more intimately involved with the planning for it.
Thanks, Dale. So yeah, it's a real challenge. I think you know, the biggest thing that we are trying to do right now is put together almost like a virtual show for the work that happened last year. We were delayed with the show because of the virus actually slowing the shipping of models back to our studio, and that's forced us into a completely new space where we're trying to display the work that students have at some point in the next month online as part of a showing of their final work. I mean, fortunately, again, we've got very good assets that we're working with in terms of media, film of the models that we're putting together for the public. And the way we're thinking about doing that is to do it again through a range of different approaches. So one is to allow the industry to speak on some of the major themes that the students have been concerned with, and that's actually quite useful for us because we think in real time and give access to that discussion. But we also then want to use that to then potentially lead the industry to talk directly to the students. So our idea is to, again, as we have with the program, to try and use the technology to actually deliver a different experience, but one that actually can engage the industry with the students more directly, more intimately, to allow the industry potentially to be more selective in which students they want to talk to, and to use you know, chat rooms or meetings or seminars and webinars to form both a sort of a piece of thought leadership with us and our partners, organisations like SAIC, and Carl and so on, but also to build a more intimate connection between the industry and the students, so the students can actually talk to people in the industry directly online, show them their work online, and actually see and understand what the industry is seeking in terms of the kind of skills and assets that they're looking for in the students. So you know, we're trying to take a more positive approach to that and use the platforms to our own benefit, really.
And Carl, you know, let's be honest, right? China's probably asleep now, so you can say what you like and nobody will know. But, you know, moving forward, yeah, this has been recorded. Unfortunately, I got a Huawei phone, so probably somebody actually connected anyway. But, you know, moving forward, you had plans set your cars were kind of in production. You knew what you were going to do. Car sharing was probably in there somewhere. How has this pandemic affected what you as an organization think your plans moving forward when it comes to designing the vehicles? Because that's a huge element now of social distancing. Has the pandemic changed your approach to what you've got coming up?
I would say it's not. Of course, it's going to change. You know, it's going to change. Not necessarily our approach, but it's going to change the way that consumers, users of cars, think about, you know, their concerns when they're buying vehicles. And certainly, like, car sharing is a huge question mark over that kind of business model in this environment. You have to think that you know, that's kind of a real challenge now. But you know, it's going to take I think it's going to take a long time for this thing to really sort of settle, and for us to understand what's the real effect and how to design better products to respond to this. And it'll have to be done quite, you know, we'll have to respond quickly, but right now we're still in the middle of it. You know, particularly in the West, we're right smack in the middle of it. In China, they're coming out the other end, and you know, we can see things are quickly returning back to some degree of what you would deem normal life in China. So yeah, it is hard to say for sure, but you know, our priority right now is to get things back up and running. You know, get those new products underway. Yeah, make sure they meet the requirements of the customer. Ultimately, that's what we're you know, that's what we're focused on. But you know, things like health and air pollution are already an issue. You know, it's already been a growing issue for a number of years. This has just sort of pushed it further. And made it feel a little bit more, maybe a little bit more invasive, because it's, you know, the sort of immediate effects are a little bit more severe. So yeah, it's just progressed it a bit faster. But
yeah, I think with that, there's some interesting things about how it might affect the external environment. I mean, measures going on, say, in London for reducing car use are probably going to be accelerated by this.
Yeah.
In terms of more, you know, encouraging more cycling, closing roads down, making more pedestrianised areas. So it's going to, I think it'll change views on cars in a certain way. Whether it sticks or not, I don't know. It's really hard to tell whether any of us will get on a plane in the next 6 months or 12 months or ever again, you know, or whether we want to, you know. That's going to be the key, really, is whether we want to.
Exactly.
I think the most important thing is going to be, really, can the businesses, can they survive and get back on their feet and get back to some normality? I think that's the real crucial thing, you know.
Yes.
And then start producing product that's appropriate, you know.
Okay, I've got a question from India. So we're international, we are, guys. You know, when you were talking about, we were talking earlier about how the courses have done, and virtually they were completed when it all happened. Now we're moving into September, we're moving into October, and the course is just about to kick off. And there's a huge element of what you guys do, which is building stuff, which is prototyping. I mean, what is the plan? Or is there going to be a staggered approach like high schools and secondary schools, or are you planning for a virtual environment? And how are you going to deal with the challenges of not being able to build stuff?
Well, I think I'll come to Chris in a moment, because I think there's also some interesting things. I mean, one of the things about building up for students is also to learn by doing, you know, and making mistakes. And I think that's also a thing that the virtual environment is very difficult to kind of control, you know, because in a sense you don't make mistakes virtually like you would do in a workshop. So that element of learning is quite hard to kind of redo. I think we're talking at the moment about how we can do different methods of prototyping and different fidelities of model, for example, to kind of to get some experience. Whether that leads as a process to a virtual model, or whether it becomes its own right, I don't know yet. We're just trying to understand that process a bit more, I think.
Yeah, that's right. We're quickly developing this sort of side of the curriculum actually to encourage our students to make. We want our students to make more in 3D actually. So it's slightly ironic that we've had studio resources taken away at a time when we want them to make more. And so what we're doing is trying to find and develop new tools, as Dale has said, to actually encourage that in a sort of online or home environment. So we're looking at how we can move the students on a project from sketch models made at home with resources available that they either have or can buy through the post. And we have students actually ordering parts already on Amazon and making quite complex working prototypes. We saw some of those in the brief that we delivered a couple of weeks ago, which is a UX brief, and saw some really interesting things that were made by students at home that was actually quite impressive. But then taking that right through to thinking about the CAD environment and software, and how we can then network our students and the students' CAD outputs to partners who can then create 3D prototypes remotely, and then have those sent back to the students so that we can have those critiqued online. So we're trying to connect and short circuit some of these elements and build our own tools. And I think VR obviously comes into that as well to a large extent. I think behind all of that and behind all of the things that we're trying to do is a kind of a bigger question really, which is about probably demanding or asking our students to build resourcefulness as a kind of an asset or mindset. I think the best designers are highly resourceful, highly creative. They deal with these challenges. They should be able to deal with challenges with flexibility and creativity. So in a sense, this is a great challenge for our students to kind of think of ways around some of these challenges, how you build 3D at home, how you can develop things in a challenging space. So in a sense, we see this as being a mirror of what's happening in industry, and in a way, a chance for the students to get really good skills, executive skills that should equip them in a really strong way once they go into the industry.
And Carl, would that mean that it's going to would that make your life easier? Because if these kids have had to be super innovative in this challenging time, there's going to be a group of students here who are going to be challenged. We don't know how long for. Is that going to make your job easier, or does it make it harder because you get them and they've had maybe not as much experience as historical students would have had?
I mean, I think our studio in London is, we're an advanced studio. We're kind of we're supplying ideas with a small team. We're a team of around 20 designers feeding in ideas on a whole load of projects. I mean, we've got a long list of projects right now, which is great. But it means it's very dynamic. There's lots of things going on. There's lots of we work for a company that's on the other side of the globe, completely different culture, completely different language. Some of the skills that we're being forced to use now, actually we've been using for quite a long time in the environment where we've got a UK design studio talking to a studio in China and a management in China as well. We have to bridge that gap of language because we just don't speak the same language, and even the nuances of design are often lost. So this is a really good chance for people to improve those communication skills through kind of digital mediums and platforms. So actually, if anything, it puts them in a really good position for going into this environment where it is, we all hear that how volatile and disruptive and how kind of innovative and changeable things are. Well, I think we're experiencing it now, and this is, I think as Chris said, the ability to adapt to this stuff and find ways of achieving the results are crucial skills really for the modern design environment, where we have to work fast and we have to kind of adapt quickly, but we have to kind of find the result fast as well. So so I think all these things and all the tools that are out there at the moment, there's some fantastic tools available, coming from all sorts of industries like the gaming industry. There's lots of platforms where students can access this. Doesn't have to be the traditional tools. They can use other things to sell their ideas. And ultimately, that's what this is about. You know, it's kind of communication. It's kind of communication of idea, and you know, there are lots of different ways to achieve that. So it's whatever works for the particular project. So
yeah, I think that's a good point to end on. I think what in summary of what you guys have said is there's massive opportunities, and maybe we haven't always embraced this digital environment. I think we've always thought we should and could, and now actually said we do, but we actually haven't used it to its maximum. And the students and the colleges and the professional designers getting pushed in different directions is actually going to, I feel, and talking to you guys, and I hope the audience feels the same, we're going to end up with probably more rounded students with a bit more creativity to them, and it may actually identify the best students who come out of this and show their nous, rather than, I think Dale, you said the loudest one. You know,
Yes.
that it actually might come out of that. I did have one more question, but we've oh, go on, Dale, after you, please.
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, I've been around the business a long time. Probably I'm older than all you guys, but, you know, I think there's never been a golden time. You know, people always think it was better in the past, there was better facilities or more time or whatever, but I think really design by its nature is always at that apex of change, you know. So this is just another one of those periods, and we just have to work through it, you know. I think it was the same when the petrol crisis or when people started to introduce digital. It's always been challenge in the business, you know. It's never been completely open. And I think this is just another one, you know. So we just have to work through it.
Yeah.
And we are
And
we are creative and we are clever, so we should be able to find ways, you know.
yeah, most definitely. And you know, we've just come up to our hour, guys. So I mean, we could carry on for ages on this, and there's questions coming through. I want to just say something. There was a few technical issues with the questions. I can see them, but they're a bit broken. But what we're going to do is, all you guys have asked questions, we're going to supply it to the guys here. We're going to allow them to answer. We'll put a little package together so they'll have an opportunity to answer some of the questions. I just want to say it's been an inspiration. It's a difficult time for everyone working in remote locations. And I'm very lucky for you, Dale and Chris, that I only took you to about September, October, and we didn't get to Christmas and what you're going to do and what you're going to buy me for Christmas. But it's going to be interesting how you do the degree shows, and it's going to be fascinating, Carl, how you actually select the students based on this virtual environment. We're looking forward to doing it. We promise to cover it on Car Design News using all platforms possible. And we're looking forward to seeing, hopefully, Carl, we'll get that MG car. I used to have an MG BGT many moons ago in Racing Blue. Hopefully we'll get one on the road again. But I want to say a special thank you to Dale, Chris, and Carl for giving us the time today. I hope you, as the audience, have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being the host. Our next live stream will be next week with the guys from Ford. We're talking about VR and doing a little bit of a demo showing how they've used VRED. So this time next week, you can join us. This will be recorded, so those guys who want to watch it again, they can watch it back and see the mistakes or pick up on any questions that Carl didn't quite answer. Please watch it. And I want to say a special thanks to you three. Thank you, guys, for giving your time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And stay safe out there, everyone.
Yeah, likewise. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye now.